Hey, what's going on, guys? You guys seem to always enjoy these videos, you know, the why I'm buying blank games for blank console and blank year. As you read from the title, today we're going to be covering why I'm buying PS4 games in 2023. You know, I'm always collecting games for various platforms, whether it be for Atari, NES, SNES, PS1, PS2, 3, 4, same for all the Xboxes, original Xbox 360, Xbox One, Series X, etc. I'm always collecting, which means that my library is always expanding. And another thing worth noting is that if there's like a no-brainer game that I should have in my collection, it's probably because I've already played it through PS Plus, because, like, you know, they give out free games every single month and they're always giving out like really big AAA titles, honestly. So if there's a game that I should have and it's like a no-brainer, like, dude, you should have got that as soon as you got the console, more than likely I probably already got it through PS Plus, or it's on PS Plus's new subscription service. They have this new PS Plus Essential, Extra, and Premium. I'm subscribed to Premium. I paid for the annual subscription and it's actually a pretty good deal. You pay like $120 a year and then you get access to like all of these games. So more than likely, if there's a game that I should have in my collection but I don't, it's probably because either A, it's on that service, or B, it's on Xbox Game Pass, which I also have, or C, I just already have it physically on Xbox One and I wanted to instead buy a game that I didn't have yet on PS4. And furthermore, like I said, my library is always expanding, so, you know, there's always new games coming into my collection. We'll talk more about the answer to the title of why I'm buying the games later on. First, we're going to go ahead and kind of just go through the collection and show you guys what I have at the moment. So I never do this in any particular order. It's just kind of like a big pile of games next to me. I just grab it off my collection and throw it onto my futon next to me. So we'll start over here. First up, we got Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth: Shadow of War. This is actually still sealed. I haven't gotten around to playing this one yet. However, I did play Mordor. I absolutely love this game. The Nemesis system in this game was so innovative, and to this day, it still is. I haven't seen a game that's executed it as well as this one. Oh no, listen. The disc got loose. I'll fix it one day when I open it. I know there's a way you can, like, you know, center it and get it clicked back in from the outside of the case, but, you know, I don't want to push too hard on the case or risk damaging it by any means, but, yeah. Still gotta get around to Shadow of War. However, Mordor was absolutely fantastic. I've heard some mixed things about War, though. Most people have said, like, I'm probably fine off just playing Mordor and then moving on, but, you know, I'm the type of guy, if I started a series, I like to see it through to the end, so I'm still gonna play it, but I've heard mixed things about War. I'm still excited for it regardless. Next up, we got Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I just beat this game a couple months ago, and, you know, it was fun, but the difficulty was definitely way overhyped. I didn't struggle with that one as much as I thought I was going to, just based off of everything that I heard about it. You know, I've already played a lot of games in the past that kind of rely on similar mechanics, whether that be parrying or deflecting, and if I'm gonna be honest, out of all the From Software games, I struggled with this one the least, surprisingly. It was a fun game. I like the spin on it, how they focused a bit more on the story, but, yeah, you know, overall it was a fun game. Next up, we got Zombieland Double Tap Road Trip. This is one of those, like, twin-stick shooters. I love my twin-stick shooters. Anyone that knows me knows I'm constantly looking for new, like, twin-stick shooters. Last year, for example, I replayed Zombie Nation, and then I played Alien Nation for the first time. There's also this fun duology, I guess we'll call it, on the Xbox 360 indie game store called Attack of the Zombie Horde. I love those games to death. I replay 1 and 2 constantly. Next up, we got the Crew Wild Run Edition. This game is honestly really good, and it doesn't get talked about enough. Basically, the premise of the game is that, you know, you're doing these races and stuff kind of similar in, I think, like Forza Horizon or Burnout Paradise. It's a massive open world. You're racing around. However, this game takes place over the course of, like, the entire USA. I mean, granted, it's not like the entire USA to scale, but it's like a miniature version of it, and it's honestly insane being able to drive from like California over to Florida, for example. It's a great game, and it definitely doesn't get enough love. Next up, we got The Last of Us Remastered and The Last of Us Part 2. I've already spoken my piece on these games. Both of these are in my top 5 favorite games of all time. I absolutely love The Last of Us 1 and 2. In my opinion, they are must-play games, especially the first one. If you don't get around to the second one, I mean, okay, you should still play it though, because it's part of the story, but regardless, at least play the first one at some point in your life. It is a must-play. Next up, we got Titanfall 2. This is home to one of the best FPS campaigns I've ever played, and if I'm gonna be honest, you know, I'm not gonna spoil it, but towards the end, it was a bit of a tearjerker. They had me crying a bit. Thankfully, things ended up working out, but again, I'm not going to spoil it. If you haven't played the campaign in this game, please do so. It is totally worth the price of admission alone. Back around Christmas time, actually, I had just picked up my little brother a copy of this game, and he played through it recently. He sent me a text after he beat it. He was like, dude, I love that game, so, you know, that was great to see. Yeah, you can probably pick this up online for less than 10 bucks at this point, and usually it goes on sale for like $5, $6 on like Xbox and PlayStation, for example, quite often, so I highly recommend it. And there's actually still like a dedicated community of people that play the multiplayer, so, you know, that's definitely worth checking out too. The multiplayer in that game was actually a lot of fun. Next up, we got Watch Dogs Legion. It's a cool concept. The execution was a little Mixed, I mean, you know, it's a cool concept being able to play as, like, anybody out on the street, any of the NPCs and stuff like that, but I feel like, I don't know, there's just something about the way that this game executed it. It feels like it didn't live up to its fullest potential. That being said, I don't really get the hate for this game. I thought it was just fine. Like, I actually thoroughly enjoyed the game. It's definitely not, like, a bad game by any means, but, yeah, there was definitely a little bit of missed potential there. Next up, we got Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. If you're gonna play either one of these, just play Persona 5 Royal. This is the complete version of the game. Unfortunately, Persona 5 is one of those JRPGs where, like, initially it launched with a part of the game missing from launch, so then everybody kind of knew that a DLC was coming out, so, you know, that was kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. Royal is here now, and this version of the game is absolutely amazing. I cannot recommend it enough, and that goes for the rest of the Persona games. I'm glad to see that Persona is finally getting, like, the mainstream appeal and recognition that it deserves, but yeah, if you haven't played the other ones either, like Persona 4, 3, or even the first two games, I highly recommend going back and playing those. And then the spin-off game of Persona 5 Strikers, it's not, you know, the same thing as Persona 5 when it comes to, like, the turn-based combat and, you know, some of the RPG mechanics and stuff like that, but it's still a really good time, and I highly recommend that game as well. Next up, we're just gonna go ahead and knock all three of these out at once. We have Dark Souls Remastered, Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, and then Dark Souls 3. All of these are pretty great games for the most part. Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, if I'm gonna be honest, if you've never experienced Dark Souls 2, just do yourself a favor, go pick up an Xbox 360 or a PS3 or like that one edition on Steam that is just like the vanilla version of the game. Scholar, all the fake fans are gonna sit there and tell you that Scholar the First Sin is the definitive version of Dark Souls, but any real Souls fan that has played both versions can tell you that, yeah, Scholar, no. Enemy spam, the enemy placement is still terrible. It's just, there's some areas in this game that are genuinely unplayable, like Shrine of Amana and Iron Keep give me PTSD flashbacks every time I even hear their names. If you go to like Shrine of Amana and Scholar of the First Sin, and then you go back and play it in vanilla, it feels like two completely different areas because, you know, I didn't want to like throw my controller across the room when I was playing the vanilla version. Is it a perfect game? Not even close, no matter what version you go with. Dark Souls 2 definitely, you know, it gets hated on a bit much in my opinion. But then we got Dark Souls 1, which is easily my favorite From Software game. And then Dark Souls 3, which would be like my third favorite From Software game. This game, both Dark Souls 1 and 3 are absolute masterpieces. And for anyone curious, Demon Souls is my second favorite From Software Souls game. Something about Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls just hits different. I hold those games like so close to my heart. Like they feel so good to play. The atmosphere, the worlds, the combat, it just, I don't know, those games are timeless to me. Next up, we got some sports games because when I buy PS4 games, I have a tendency to like look for lots. So like if I'm gonna get a PS4 game, but I see that there's like another lot for sale on eBay or Mercari that doesn't cost that much more, usually I'll just go for the lot because, you know, it's a better bang for buck, it's a better value overall, especially if that lot has other games in it that I was planning on getting at some point. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just knock out some of these sports games. Madden NFL 16, NBA 2K18, and NHL 21. I haven't played these. I don't plan to. I'll keep them on hand because, like, for NBA, for example, sometimes I get in the mood to go in and, you know, just shoot some hoops or whatever. Like, if there's any sports game I'm going to play, the only one that I've ever been drawn to actually play is NBA, but otherwise, and I'd rather just go play something else. Like, if I'm gonna play a sports game, why not just go play one of the more video gamey ones? Like NBA Jam or something like that? Like, I don't know, just like one of those older ones. Anyway, next up we got Minecraft. If you're getting a console, you have to get Minecraft for it. I feel like that's just like an unwritten rule. Next up we got GTA 5 Premium Edition, but it's GTA 5. It's the second best selling game of all time. I don't need to tell you why it's great. I still love GTA 5 to this day. Admittedly, I kind of fell off of GTA Online. I don't play it as much anymore. The last time I booted it up was when they released that Dr. Dre DLC. I played through that like 3 different times. It was actually a lot of fun. When it comes to GTA Online, I'm also more of a solo player. I don't really like playing with people, period. I don't know. I'm really antisocial. I don't like talking to people. I don't really like playing with people. And it's weird because I love multiplayer games. Like, I play Call of Duty all the time. I played a lot of GTA Online. I play other games that involve like multiplayer stuff like that. And I enjoy playing those games. It's just I don't like the co-op aspect specifically. Like, I just don't like having to team up with people and talk to them, you know what I mean? I guess it's just the communication part that I don't really like. But anyways, yeah, GTA 5, I constantly go back to replay the story mode. I've beaten it multiple times at this point. I usually do a playthrough like once every 3 or 4 years, just because I kind of get an itch to go back into that world. I haven't beaten it since like 2019 though, so I'm definitely due for a replay. That game, that world, those characters, it's timeless. Next up, we got Final Fantasy 15 Day 1 Edition. I've spoken my piece on Final Fantasy 15. In my opinion, it is not only one of the most underrated Final Fantasy games, but it's also just like one of the most underrated RPGs. I mean, granted, it's a Final Fantasy game, and with how huge that this series is, it's kind of hard to call it underrated just because like how big the sales numbers are, just how many people know about it. But seriously, so many people dunk on Final Fantasy 15. Like, you know, I know the Royal Edition technically made some quote-unquote improvements, and that's the version that I just played through recently because I hadn't played the Royal Edition before. I had only played through Vanilla back when it launched. That being said, I think either version of Final Fantasy 15 is good. I think Royal Edition is good, and so is the Vanilla version, you know? People always try to say, like, the ending was, like, that's a big talking point, like, the ending is rushed, but if I'm gonna be honest, I really like the pace of, like, the last bit of the game there. If I had to choose between some long, drawn-out dungeon or just, like, getting right to the final boss that I've already been, like, working for the last, like, 20 to 30 hours to get to, I'm cool with just kind of shaving off the filler and getting right to, like, the action, you know what I mean? And plus, it's not even like it was that bare bones. There was still, like, the whole city part leading up to that, and then you had, like, the one big boss before you went in. So, you know, while it wasn't, like, the exact same as other Final Fantasy games, you think, like, something like Final Fantasy 7 where you have, like, the big final dungeon. I feel like for what Final Fantasy 15 was going for, it still worked with that game. Was it the original developer's intentions or vision? Obviously not, because they went back and fixed it in Royal, but for what vanilla Final Fantasy 15 is in the way that it released, I think it's perfectly fine the way that it is. I don't really care if that's a hot take, that's just how I am. I'm out here, I like defending the little guy. Feel free to disagree with me, we're all entitled to our opinions at the end of the day, but that's just my take on it. Anyways, next up we got Elden Ring. I mean, I don't need to talk about Elden Ring. I mean, it won Game of the Year last year. We all know what Elden Ring is, right? It's a great game and all, but yeah, it's Elden Ring. I'm not gonna go too deep into it now, but, you know, when I look at Elden Ring compared to the other From Software games, it never really resonated with me in the same way as the other ones. It's not a bad game. Don't even get me. This game is absolutely phenomenal, okay? I love this game. It's a lot of fun to play, but when it comes to, like, that personal level, I just never really felt any messages or anything, like, sticking with me, you know? Like, Dark Souls 1, for example, I looked at that kind of like as, like, an allegory for depression, almost. And then those themes kind of lingered on throughout the Souls series, but then you got to Elden Ring, and it just kind of felt like a big, bombastic RPG with Souls elements and big open world, cool, but I don't know, there wasn't really anything that was pulling me in and, you know, making me feel attached to the world on a personal level. I found it really hard to connect with the game, if that makes sense. Next up, we got Diablo 3. I love my Diablo games. I've been playing the Diablo games since Diablo 2. I played Diablo 3 a ton back at launch on the Xbox 360. Unfortunately, I do not have that copy anymore because that is one of the games that I stupidly traded in as a teenager. However, I repurchased it recently. I got the Ultimate Evil Edition on PS4. Runs buttery smooth, 60 FPS, 1080p. It is chef's kiss. Looks amazing. Next up, we got Days Gone, another game that gets dunked on way too much. This game is absolutely fantastic, and anybody that says otherwise is just, I don't know, they're a hate bandwagoning for some reason. People on the internet do that a lot. They find a game that's getting dunked on, and they just kind of hop on the bandwagon because they have nothing better to do with their lives besides chase internet clout and try to get a few measly clicks. And speaking of games that are heavily underrated, Cyberpunk 2077, it's in my top 5 favorite games of all time. This game is absolutely fantastic. If you have not played it yet, I don't care if you're on Xbox One, PS4, PS5, Series X, Series S, PC. If there's a way for you to play this game and you haven't yet, please experience it. You can knock out the main story in like 12, 15 hours tops. Then you have all the side content, which adds on like another 15, 20 hours to that. Just please give this game a shot. It is so good, and anybody that dunked on this game, they were dunking on it rightfully for the performance and the bugs, but beyond that, on a gameplay level and a story level and stuff like that, this game is absolutely fantastic. Next up, I'm just gonna kind of reach for a couple games that I don't need to speak too much about. Battlefield Hardline, you know, it's an FPS game. The campaign was really cool, kind of did like the whole cops and robbers show type thing, and I was honestly in love with that idea back in the day. I only just got around to, you know, finishing the campaign earlier last year, but it was honestly fantastic. I highly recommend that one. That game goes for cheap often as well. It still has its dedicated fans that play the online multiplayer as well. It's a lot of fun. The next up, we got the Call of Duties, and considering the fact that Call of Duty is like the best-selling game every year, I don't need to linger on these for too long. We got Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and Modern Warfare Remastered, the Legacy Edition, World War II, Black Ops Cold War, Call of Duty Vanguard. I also have a couple of the Call of Duties digital. I always get every Call of Duty every year on day one, and the only reason that I don't have any of the other ones on PS4 is because I already have them on my Xbox. I'm an absolute COD fanatic. I get the games day one. I get the game on every platform that it's available on. Like I take Call of Duty serious. Next up, we got Bloodborne, another From Software game. You know, this game's pretty good. I had a lot of expectations going in just because of how much, you know, people put in such high regard, but, you know, Again, it wasn't a bad game by any means, but similar to Elden Ring, I just found it really hard to connect with this world, and that's important for me with the Souls games, just because a lot of the messages that they tend to try to get across and a lot of the themes that they try to tell, but with like Bloodborne and Elden Ring, I just found it really hard to connect on that personal level with the world and the characters and stuff like that. The gameplay in itself was fine. It was definitely one of the easier Souls games once you got into it. And out of any Souls game, if I'm going to be honest, the boss variety in that game was really weak. I had a lot of people telling me, because I made a series on my original playthrough, they were like, man, you missed a lot of optional content, you missed the DLC. So I went back recently, actually, just like last month. I went back through, did a full playthrough. I beat all the optional bosses along with all the main bosses. I did the DLC, and honestly, I wasn't that impressed. Like, the bosses were good, they were cool, and like, design-wise, they were all like masterfully crafted, but it was just like, you know, I've seen this all before, you know what I mean? There's only so many different ways that, you know, big fluffy beasts can attack me, or they can do an AoE, or they start swinging their fist before I'm like, alright, you know, how are we gonna start to switch up this formula? Honestly, if they would just make like a Souls game similar to like Dark Souls 1 or Demon Souls again, where it's like, it's more slow and methodical, and like, you know, you gotta like, calculate when to attack, when not to attack, you know, managing the stamina bar and stuff like that. I feel like that could be pretty cool to kind of have like a return to form type of game. Next up, we got Spider-Man Game of the Year edition. I mean, it's Spider-Man. You know, I know I've been saying this for a lot of games, but truly, like, the PS4 and Xbox One generation was just home to so many, like, instant classic type games, and Spider-Man is definitely one of them. This is hands down one of my favorite superhero games of all time, and while we're talking about superhero games, let me go ahead and grab the other ones here. We got Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy. This one is way too underrated. If you haven't played this yet, I believe it's still on Xbox Game Pass, so I would highly recommend going to play it there, or if it's not there, just, you know, if you see it at the store, pick it up. It's genuinely amazing. It is criminally underrated. I'm not going to say anything else about it besides if you haven't played it, please do so. And another game that I feel like gets a bit too much hate is Marvel Avengers. You know, I know that's definitely a hot take, but I genuinely enjoy the game. Granted, I didn't stick around for like the end game stuff. I was just there for the main story, and for what the main story is, I thought that it was fantastic. I still have to dive back in. I want to play the new content that they've added, like, you know, they put in Black Panther and Hawkeye and Winter Soldier and Spider-Man and stuff like that. I haven't gotten to play that content yet, but I do plan to go back in actually quite soon, and I'm very excited to do so. Next up, we got Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Fun fact about me and Valhalla, I beat this game in 5 days, and I do not regret a thing. I literally spent every second of my existence for those 5 days just playing Valhalla, and if I could go back, I wouldn't do anything different. I genuinely enjoyed Valhalla. It made you feel like you were taking over a country. Every single step of that country. Next up, we got Jump Force, another criminally underrated game. This game was honestly fantastic. People dunk on it. That's what the internet does. Personally, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, dude, it's like all of my favorite childhood animes in one game. Well, not all of them, but a good portion of them. One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball, and then you get to like make your own avatar to interact with the story. It was so fun. Next up, we got Fallout 4, a fantastic Bethesda RPG. Some people kind of give Fallout 4 some crap for like the lackluster dialogue options or whatever, but I don't care, man. I'm here to play video games. I'm here to enjoy video games. The way I see it, Fallout 4 was a good time. It was fun. It was a great game, and that's what matters. So next up, we got Lego Incredibles. After that, we got Spyro the Reignited Trilogy. I love the Reignited Trilogy. It's 3 of my childhood games, just all in one collection. And then finally, my favorite game of all time, Resident Evil 4. So to kind of just like, you know, wrap all of this up, why am I buying PS4 games in 2023? Well, it's because we're kind of at that mid-generational point where PS4 games are finally getting cheap enough to be able to collect reasonably. I mean, they've been like that for a while now, but now, like, more so than ever. You can pick up a huge lot of PS4 games for a lot cheaper than ever, and while we're at this point, you know, we're at that point where PS4 games are definitely not the cheapest that they're ever gonna be, but they're getting pretty close to it, where, like, any game that you want, you could probably find for a reasonable price, and there's not any games that are necessarily rare yet or hard to find. They're all just like pretty readily available for the most part. Yeah, now I definitely want to hear from you guys down below. Is there any games in this collection that caught your eye? Do you happen to collect any video games? Is there any games that you plan to pick up after watching this? Are you possibly planning to get into collecting after watching this video? Whatever it is and whatever you're thinking, I definitely want to hear from you guys. But anyway, as always, a shout out to the patrons and channel members, Karma's Figure, Malubity Tab, Big Daddy Mandy, Chalupa Source, Rex, Ray, Zach, Polar, Ray, Webster, Lamas, Bianca, Turkers, Drippasant, Miller, Lasking, Pudu, Magic, Mr. Nervy, 15, Flemington 1, Aaron Reynolds, Unknown, and Christopher Huerta, I think is how you say it. I'm so sorry if I messed up that name. Christopher I was reading it like Huerta or Huerta. I'm not really sure how to say it. If you're watching this video and if you could leave like a pronunciation guide down in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.